All right, Ben, the Song of Solomon.
All right.
All right. A little background first, just a little bit. Many believe this was actually written by Solomon. I think that's possible, though the opening line could be translated of Solomon, meaning like in Solomon's honor, for example,
Right.
something like that. I think there's some good reasons to doubt that it was written by Solomon, but I just want our listeners to understand it doesn't have to be written by Solomon. It doesn't mess up anything in the book or negate inspiration of the Spirit or divine authorship. It could be written in his honor or something like that, and that's totally fine. What's the book about? It's a song. It's a poem about the burgeoning passion of romance, right? And between a young man and a young lady, maybe he's a shepherd, or maybe that's just a metaphor. She's a country girl. She might be a shepherdess. It's definitely taking place during the reign of King Solomon. Solomon is referred to numerous times. That's one of the awkward things. Like, would Solomon refer to himself in these ways, or someone else referring to Solomon, writing in his honor? You could see it either way. But the thesis, the main point, I guess, of the overarching idea is that the intimate union between a husband and a wife is a God-given gift to enjoy within the confines of marriage. Even though the book has scenes of consummation throughout the song, and that makes some people wonder if they really waited till marriage, because it's not like, I hope we'll get to do this, and then finally they do. You have scenes of it before they actually do, which is probably chapter 8, when they actually consummate the marriage. But these preview scenes take place in dreams. So like in chapter 3, verse 1, on my bed by night, I sought him whom my soul loves. I sought him, but found him not. She's, you can interpret that she's in her bed sleeping, thinking, and then the things that she starts thinking about going forward, it's what she's hoping for, what she's dreaming for. In chapter 5, verse 2, I slept, but my heart was awake. Okay, so what does that mean? If you're sleeping, but your heart is awake, okay, and then what precedes? A sound, my beloved is knocking, in the dream.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And that's not just wishful thinking. There's numerous refrains throughout the book urging the reader to wait until it's the right time. So that wouldn't make sense to have this refrain. So I'll give you some examples. Chapter 2, verse 7. I adjure you, O daughters of Jerusalem, by the gazelles or the does of the field, that you not stir up or awaken love until it pleases. Again in 3, verse 5. I adjure you, O daughters of Jerusalem, by the gazelles or does of the field, that you not stir up or awaken love until it pleases. Chapter 8, verse 4. I adjure you, O daughters of Jerusalem, that you not stir up or awaken love until it pleases. And until it pleases doesn't mean whenever you please.
Right.
It means love has its own time for consummation, and it fits with the rest of the witness of Scripture that sexual intimacy is for marriage. And so you're not waiting for the right moment, for the right setting. You're waiting for the right context, which is a covenant marriage relationship, holy matrimony. Okay, so some themes. Physical marital intimacy is a gift from God to be enjoyed in the proper time and in the proper context. This is something that might be difficult for some people to read, and I'll get into that in just a moment. But that's a clear theme. This is not dirty or ugly. In the right context, in the right way, it's actually to be enjoyed as a gift of God. But not just the physical aspect of intimacy, romance is a gift of God. Yeah. They're not just being physical with each other. They're talking it up. They're describing each other. They're hoping and longing for each other. They're waiting for each other. So there's a lot of romance there, not just from her, but from him. And so it's not a feminine trait to be romantic. A third one is that marriage itself is a gift from God. The sexual union is a physical enactment of this deeper bond. And not all of the words here are purely sexual. Much of it points to a deeper love between them that goes beyond the physical aspect. So those are themes: the physical act, the romance side, the theme of marriage being the appropriate context. Those are the prominent themes. Some tips to read through. One of them is it can be easy to get lost in who's speaking, who's saying that. First, this person's referring to he, and then this person's referring to she. And the breaks that, let's say you're reading the ESV. Let's just go with ESV, right? If you're reading ESV, the ESV, English Standard Version, puts rubrics there that'll tell you he.
Yeah.
And then he's speaking, or then she is speaking, right? Those are not originally in the text. That's the publishing house
trying to help you out,
keep track that the voice is switching out. They're not taking random stabs in the dark with it. The gendered language helps, right? And also whether it's singular or plural, that helps. So think of it like, I'm not big into opera, but I would imagine, I've never been to one, I would imagine this is sort of like that. They're singing, but there's characters and there's a story and there's kind of a plot and it's leading somewhere. And your main characters are this young man, whether it's Solomon or somebody else, and then he's wooing this young woman. So there's your second character. Some people see another character, King Solomon himself, who kind of steps into the scene. Imagine he comes from, behind the curtain every once in a while and pops out. Or he might be the same person as the young man, but he might be a third character. And then there's a chorus of voices. I think ESV puts it as others.
Yeah, others.
I think they're like young maidens that sing behind Belle in Beauty and the Beast or something. They
just like in a musical, there's a chorus cast behind the main characters.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And they pop in here and there and provide a sort of chorus for this song. So one tip is to just use a Bible that has those rubrics so you don't get lost in the characters and you don't have to kind of figure out. It's sometimes harder to figure out in the English than it is in the Hebrew. Is this plural, singular, who's he, she? So use those and that'll help you keep track of what's going on. I have one other tip, and that is approaching this book in a way where you can appreciate it. I think sometimes we have to do some introspection and ask ourselves why it feels awkward or cringy or yucky or...
That's what I was going to say. Some of the fact that there's a love poem in the Bible messes with our categories a little bit.
Right.
What are we reading here? This is like a...
Yes. I think some of it is because we spend so long, at least it feels like a really long time when you're young, and you're not yet married, and you have this urge and these longings that are natural. We spend so much of our lives learning to avoid physical intimacy. Mm-hmm. Shut it down. Fight that feeling. Don't let your mind run away with things, and to restrain it and to chase in your mind. That then when we come to this book that is about sexual intimacy, even though it's in the Bible, it could feel awkward because of that. But I think if you can't read it in its appropriate context without feeling put off or feeling that cringe feeling or whatever, however you might describe that, then I think what will happen is you'll start to read it and it'll be difficult to shake off this sort of sense of guilt or shame, especially if you're enjoying the read, and that could have further repercussions in real life when it comes time for you, even in the appropriate context, to enjoy this gift with your spouse. If reading about it in the Bible made you cringe, that can be a more awkward moment than it needs to be. And so reading through the Song of Solomon ahead of time might help you confront feelings that maybe shouldn't be there or need to be put in the correct lane, so that you can enjoy God's gift properly. So this can be an amazing book for that. Of course, if you are married, this book takes on new levels of and layers of appreciation. All right, ties to Christ. All right, ties to Christ. Preachers forever have been, probably even today, I think, have been accused of just pay no attention to the sexual things. This is just about Jesus.
That's what I was going to say. It made people so uncomfortable that they were like, this has nothing to do with human beings. This is all about
That's right.
God's love. Yeah.
That's right. Pay no attention to these details. It's just Jesus and the church. And they've been criticized for sort of allegorizing the book. It's a picture of Jesus, the groom, and his bride, the church. And we just need to appreciate that Jesus and the church are together. I think that if someone takes this entire book to only refer to Christ and not have value for the things we just talked about, I think that's a big mistake. Physical intimacy, marital consummation, romance, covenant love between a man and his wife, these are all gifts from God, and the book encourages us in profound ways, through the poetry and through the lyrics and through the back and forth between he and she. It's instructive and it's helpful and it's encouraging. However, I don't think we should overcorrect and not see anything. This has nothing to do with Christ.
Right.
I get it. Every single detail, as he describes the contours of her body, what is that? Is Jesus describing the ministries of the church?
Right.
What's happening there?
Yeah.
No, you don't have to press it into every individual detail, but the broad brushstroke, the overarching idea that this represents Christ in the church is true. Paul makes that plain in Ephesians 5, where Paul argues that the very invention of marriage is by God in Genesis 2, and that invention has a purpose. Marriage has a purpose, and that purpose from the very beginning, not Paul sort of introducing it like, here's my thing, but what Genesis intended to demonstrate was that marriage is to refer to Christ and the church. Marriage refers to Christ and the church. This is pictured, as Paul explains, in the husband's sacrificial leadership of the wife and the wife's respectful submission to his leadership. But it's more than that. Paul quotes from Genesis 2 the line that says, the two shall become one flesh.
Yeah.
The two shall become one flesh. Now, the physical consummation of a marriage is the union between a man and his wife that manifests that one fleshness. That's what that is. Their bodies are each other's. The husband has rights over the wife's body. The wife has rights over the husband's body, as Paul explains in 1 Corinthians 7, verse 4. So Song of Solomon, it's a poetic expression of this covenant union that does symbolize the oneness between Christ and the church, not in the individual explicit details, but in the overarching concept of oneness.
Right.
But the purpose, I think, of those individual details is to inform the marital practice, to inform us of how to restrain our marital impulses until the context is right, and how to appreciate how united the man and the woman are in marriage.
Yeah.
And that it's like our oneness, union with Christ. All right, some takeaways. For the single person, it's okay to long for physical intimacy, but let this book encourage you in your waiting period. Let this book encourage you to wait, and to wait in appropriate ways, that it's beautiful in its time, it's appropriate in its context, and be patient, and that the Lord will provide that context for you. Specifically, single women, pray for a man who treats you like this. Pray for a man who cherishes you, thinks about you, calls you, wants to be with you.
Yeah.
Side note to the guys, it's not effeminate to express that you want to be with her,
Right.
that she excites you. But also, young ladies, find a man who restrains himself. That as much as he longs for you, he respects you enough to restrain himself. He loves God enough to restrain himself. And for single men, pray for a woman who wants your leadership, who dreams about being with you. That's good to look for, but also someone who restrains herself.
Yep.
For married folks, perhaps this book can reignite or in some ways reinvigorate the romance in your marriage, not just the physical intimacy, but the romance aspect of it as well. And maybe along with Paul's instructions in 1 Corinthians 7, you can be reminded to not neglect physical intimacy. One more. There's no need to feel awkward or strange reading this book. I would say some of that is we take in so much junk about sex that it's hard to read something pure about it. So stop clicking on porn. Stop watching movies that invite you into other people's bedrooms, even if they're actors, and filter the things that you watch. You don't have to watch those things.
Yeah.
You would be amazed how many things you can still watch and enjoy, TV shows, movies, if you just make it a rule to eliminate all the ones that have graphic content or sexuality. Try to cleanse your mind about this topic and sort of detox your soul from the things that pervert the ways we think about sex so that we can approach a pure text on it and appreciate it.
Let this be your picture of what intimacy looks like, not whatever else you've seen.
Right. Yeah, it's God's gift. Enjoy it the way he intends you to enjoy it. And that might mean starving yourself of the world's, what the world is pumping out in terms of these things, and instead spending more time in a book like this, not just this one, of course, the entire Bible, but with regard to enjoying your marriage or preparing yourself for marriage, let this book put it in the right context for you.
Yep.